This is part 4 of my video series on how to reclaim your domain using Jekyll. Part 4. Woohoo. Own your own domain. I mean, it's so daunting, I recognize. And I think we have made it so much more complicated than it actually needs to be. I mean, even for starters, when I tell people that they should ditch Blogger or WordPress for Jekyll or GitHub, they totally balk, and I get that. All of these pieces need so much more explanation than the familiar WYSIWYG interface that blogging has sort of comforted people into. This is why Tumblr, this is why Medium are so popular right now. People think about the front end, but people don't actually think about the back end. People don't actually think about what it means to own their own domain. I think that all of these things have become really comfortable interfaces for people writing online. Simple sites in which you type into this WYSIWYG and it magically translates that into a blog post and you hit publish. And for those of us that have managed to poke around in the code, right, into the HTML, into the CSS, God forbid into the PHP, we sort of find this all sort of mortifyingly horrible. It's so complicated. The databases, the servers that run this is much more complicated than this process, than this promise of what the web was supposed to be. It doesn't actually have to be that way, right? We've actually made it harder increasingly over the years since the advent of the web to write online. Pardon my French, but that is so fucked up. The promise of the web was democratization of publishing, and every year since then, we've made it more and more impossible for people to do that. So I think that Jekyll is a step towards simplicity. It's not a total step, it's not the complete step, it's not the answer by any means, but I think it's an interesting step that I hope people decide to play with. And I like Jekyll for a number of reasons. For starters, it's open source, right? It also renders HTML and Markdown into websites. Both of these languages I understand much more than I do PHP, I confess. Also, it lets me see the architecture of my site. Because I actually download the whole repository that runs my website, I see all of the moving pieces of my website, all of the separate HTML, all of the CSS, and I sort of have a closer understanding, a deeper understanding of what it takes to generate my site. I love that it's free, right? There is no cost for hosting on GitHub pages. I like that it's interoperable. If I decide tomorrow that GitHub has finally reached that stage of too much evil, and let's not forget, Mark Andreessen is one of its investors, right? If I decide, fuck you, GitHub, I can move all my content, all my stuff onto another server that runs Ruby, that runs the Ruby gem for Jekyll, and I'm not stuck. I'm not ever stuck in GitHub. The editing that I'm going to show here is really preliminary, right? I want to show that there are scripts, and really, if you want to move your blog wholesale off of something like WordPress onto Jekyll, it is doable, but it's much more complex that I'm going to show in these things. What I really want to show you is what some of the working pieces of Jekyll look like, show you sort of the level of technology proficiency that it might be expected in order to be able to handle something like Jekyll. And when I say the level of technical proficiency again, I don't want to actually throw up gates. Actually, I want to throw open gates. This is the level I think that you need to be able to control your own domain. And I think that the ability to control your own domain should actually be a baseline, not something we aspire to. If that means that we need to bring more technology, make more technology more simple, then that is actually something that we should work towards. I think that owning your own shit is the most important thing you can do in an information age. If you don't own your own information in the information age, where does that put you, right? It doesn't have to be a blog, right? But it does have to be something around the web, and that means something around HTML, right? You have to give your people who come to you some sort of landing page to work their way through your stuff. But what I like about Jekyll, again, is you don't have to worry about managing the database. You don't have to worry about managing a server, as long as indeed it's handled by GitHub Pages. You can sort of outsource that elsewhere. I should say the one thing that I do in my world is I do pay for Cloudflare. Cloudflare provides a CDN, that is a content delivery network, and it does provide me some security features. That is what I pay for right now, but that's totally optional. So if you crack open your GitHub repository with a Jekyll blog, that I downloaded in the last video, you'll see, let's go there, a handful of files, right, of files and folders. Some of these are pretty self-explanatory, right? Some of them are about feed.xml, that's going to generate your XML. Index.html, that's your landing page. The CSS folder contains the CSS for your site. But let's actually start with this piece called config.html. Let's open it up here. So let's open config.yaml. YAML means yet another markup language. Ha ha ha, technology people. But you can sort of see in this file the instructions that lay out the site as a whole. You can see the title for the site, the description of the site, the email address for the author, the little logo, right? So let's pull this up again. Pigeons.click, right? Because we've set up the HTML. So you can go, if you go into a site, you can see the author's picture, right? You can see the cover picture, right? That's this, the image that lives up here. There are lots of pieces in the YAML file that dictate where everything happens. And in the YAML file for this particular GitHub repo, there's an additional set of features that indicate these sort of social features as well, right? So you can add your Twitter, your Facebook, your GitHub repo, your Google+, and other features. If you look at Hack Education, you can see that I've also used this top row to do Twitter, RSS, my GitHub repo, my email address, and then I've added a link to my About Me site. So really that config.yaml is really the underscoring piece of this, the other of the site. The next important piece is posts, which, as it sounds, is where all of the files live that are the posts to your blog. So the author of this particular repo uses Markdown. I prefer to use HTML, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually make a copy of this. Let's copy, welcome to Jekyll, make a copy, and I'm going to say, oh, we got to change the date because it's 2015. What is today's date? 02/24. Hello world.html. And let's get rid of that whole markdown thing at the end. Yes, use, and let's delete those old files. Move to trash. So let's open up those files as well. Go into posts, got the hello world, and you can see this is the basic layout of your blog sites now, like of a blog update. And this is, again, this might be intimidating for people who are used to the WYSIWYG editor, right? So we've got the title of our blog post, which I'm going to change to hello world. I'm also going to change the date to 2015, 02/24. I don't even know what time it is, but let's make it close enough to midnight. I'm going to delete the categories. I'm also going to delete the featured. And you'll notice, you'll learn quick enough that you use the header images all go into that assets folder. I can't be asked right now to deal with it. So I'm going to delete this old file. And because this is HTML and not Markdown, I need to add paragraph markers. Hello world, this is a test. Because I'm recording this live, it'll probably be a clusterfuck. End paragraph. Save, and let's go into GitHub. So GitHub knows that we've deleted these old folders, these old files, Markdown files. We've created a new file. Let's just call this update changes, commit, and sync. Let's close that up. So I haven't made any changes to the YAML file, but when you change the YAML file, it'll change like this header. You'll be able to upload new files so that you aren't stuck with DF, right? You can change the head, the subhead of your blog. Those are all things that are editable in that config YAML file. Let's hit refresh and see what we get here. We get nothing yet. We get a build. Oh, so I totally fixed my problem. I had the wrong date because, yeah. But really, I hit refresh that time and you can see that I updated my site with someone else's authorship. Yeah, sucks to be him. So as you can see, like, or hopefully as you can see, like all of these pieces are eminently editable through these various interfaces. So through something like this, we can say pigeons are awesome. And we should probably not make Dirk responsible for all of the things that we do. Oh yeah, we should probably Audrey Waters. We don't actually have an image on this particular computer, but let's upload all that, sync it, edits, commit to GitHub pages, sync. So let's see. So sometimes, so as you can see, now it's Dirk's picture, but at least it does say my name. So let's see, like some of these things don't work right away. Like I've made lots of tweaks to Hack Education. I promised before they went live. I played around with the GitHub repo locally. I played around with the pages live on github.io before I set the DNS to my site. But what I want to reiterate for folks is that I did this all without IT's help. I did this all on my own. GitHub pages have really helped me control my own domain. And I hope y'all know me, like I really wouldn't suggest this as an alternative to these other platforms if I didn't believe that this was really a more positive step towards emancipation with technology.